December 4th, 2012. 9.5 million Americans tune in to watch angels earn their wings. 3 pop superstars, a $2.5 million bra, wings weighing dozens of pounds, hours of makeup, 2 identical shows filmed to fake spontaneity. This wasn't just lingerie on a runway. It was fashion's last great spectacle before Instagram changed everything, before body positivity made angels obsolete, before the male gaze became unmarketable. But on that December night, nobody knew they were watching an ending. They thought they were watching the future. November 7th, 2012. The 69th Regiment Armory in New York, same venue where the Armory Show introduced America to modern art in 1913. Now it's about to host something else entirely, the careful manufacture of spontaneity. Here's what viewers never knew. Victoria's Secret filmed the entire show twice, back to back. Same models, same performances, same everything. Why? Because perfection doesn't happen by accident. It happens in the editing room. The first run started at 4 p.m. 35 models, 3 pop stars, hundreds of crew members. Rihanna performs Diamonds, while Alessandra Ambrosio descends in the fantasy bra. Justin Bieber sings to Angels. Bruno Mars croons as models strut past. Every moment captured from multiple angles. Then they did it all again. Same songs, same walks, different cameras. The production team could splice together the best moments from each take. That stumble on the runway? Gone. That awkward pause between songs? Erased. The live energy everyone felt watching at home was actually assembled from pieces, like a fashion Frankenstein designed to feel effortless. The genius was in what they kept. When Bieber glanced at Cara Delevingne walking past, that stayed. It felt real because it was real, just carefully selected from hours of footage. The editors had dozens of Bieber glances to choose from. They picked the one that looked most like a teenage boy forgetting he was on camera. This double-taping tradition wasn't new. VS had been doing it for years, but 2012 pushed it further than ever. With 3 A-list performers and 6 themed segments: Circus, Dangerous Liaisons, Calendar Girls, Pink Ball, Silver Screen Angels, Angels in Bloom, the margin for error was 0. CBS paid for perfection. Advertisers demanded flawlessness. And the substantial production investment didn't leave room for authenticity if authenticity meant imperfection. The models knew the drill. Smile on take 1 like it's your first time. Smile on take 2 like it's still your first time. The excitement had to read as genuine, even when your feet were aching and the heavy wings were cutting into your shoulders, even when you'd already walked this exact routine an hour ago. Between the 2 tapings, there was a break. Pizza and cocktails backstage, a VS tradition that had become part of the show's lore. Adriana Lima would later joke that angels were spoiled with this spread, mentioning the pizza, cupcakes, and cocktails served before going on stage. But Lima had given birth 6 weeks earlier. She wasn't just enjoying treats. She was performing while her body was still recovering, wearing wings that weighed dozens of pounds, smiling like none of it was difficult. Let's talk about the bra. Not just any bra, the floral fantasy bra. 20 carats of white diamonds at its center. 5,200 precious stones total. Amethysts, sapphires, rubies scattered across fabric like drops of crystallized desire. London jewelers spent months creating it. Victoria's Secret valued it at $2.5 million. Here's what that number really meant. Pure marketing genius. The valuation was strategic, high enough to generate headlines, specific enough to seem precise. Whether anyone would actually pay that amount was beside the point. The bra existed to be witnessed, not purchased. It was fashion's equivalent of a concept car, built to showcase possibility, not practicality. October 18th, 2012. Victoria's Secret unveiled the fantasy bra at their New York flagship store. Ambrosio posed in it while photographers captured every angle. The revealing happened weeks before the show, building anticipation. By the time viewers saw it on television, they'd been wanting it for over a month, wanting something that represented pure, unattainable luxury. This was VS's 20th fantasy bra. They'd been creating these since 1996, each one more elaborate than the last. But 2012's stood apart. The flower theme let them scatter gems in patterns that caught runway lights like prismatic fire. When Ambrosio walked, the bra didn't just shine. It exploded with light. The matching belt, often forgotten in discussions of the fantasy bra, added another layer of opulence. Together, the set transformed Ambrosio into something beyond human. Not quite goddess, not quite jewelry display. Something in between. Something you could look at but never touch. That untouchability was the point. In an era when fast fashion was making everything accessible, VS went the opposite direction. They created the ultimately inaccessible object. You could buy a regular VS bra for $40, but this was pure aspiration crystallized in diamonds. Ambrosio had given birth in May. 5 months postpartum, she was wearing one of the heaviest, most valuable costumes of the night. The bra and wings together required significant strength to carry. Every step demanded poise that made the weight invisible. The cameras captured fantasy, not effort. Hours of preparation. That's what it took to transform models into angels. The research mentions hair and makeup taking approximately 5 hours per model, a marathon of sitting still while teams created perfection. The process started early for the evening show. First, the body makeup, enhancing abs that were already toned, highlighting features that didn't need highlighting. Then hair, elaborate constructions that had to survive runway wind machines and the weight of decorative headpieces. Finally, the wings. Those wings. Some weighed dozens of pounds. Others stretched 8 feet wide. They weren't worn so much as engineered onto bodies. Metal frames pressing into shoulder blades, harnesses hidden under hair. Models couldn't sit down once the wings were attached. They stood for hours waiting for their segment. The physical preparation started months before. Contrary to the myth of starvation, models trained intensively. Adriana Lima worked out regularly leading up to the show. Some models later admitted trying to gain weight and muscle. Chanel Iman said she tried to fill out her outfits properly. The costumes were built for specific proportions. The wings required strength. The runway required stamina. The idealized VS body wasn't just thin. It was architecturally specific. Strong enough to carry heavy wings, curved enough to fill lingerie, lean enough to photograph as aspiration. Nutritionists worked with models to ensure they had the strength and health for the grueling performance. November 7th, backstage. Chaos orchestrated to look like calm. Dressers assigned to specific models, moving with practiced precision. A model steps out of one outfit into another, wings attached, wings removed, all in under 3 minutes. No room for modesty, no time for hesitation. The shoes, towering heels, required their own training. Models practiced walking in them for weeks. The runway was slick. The wings threw off balance. One wrong step could mean career-ending embarrassment, broadcast to millions. So they practiced until walking in those heels became muscle memory, until they could strut past Justin Bieber without wobbling. Between the themed segments, quick changes happened with military precision. The circus segment's bright colors stripped away for Dangerous Liaison's black lace. Calendar Girl's patriotic themes swapped for Pink Ball's bubblegum explosion. Each change was a complete transformation. New hair, new makeup, new energy. And through it all, they smiled. Smiled while their feet ached in their shoes. Smiled while dozens of pounds of costume compressed their spines. Smiled while their bodies were architecture for other people's fantasies. Rihanna owned that runway like she'd been walking it for years. Diamonds and fresh off the runway. She performed both while angels circled her like beautiful satellites. The power dynamic was unmistakable. The models were accessories to her performance, not the other way around. This was new. In previous years, musical guests were intermissions between fashion segments, but 2012 flipped the script. The performers were the main event. The models, despite their wings and diamonds, became elaborate backup dancers. Bruno Mars performed Locked Out of Heaven and Young Girls while models strutted past. He barely looked at them. His focus was on the cameras, the audience, the performance. The angels might as well have been highly paid extras in his music video. Then there was Bieber, 18 years old, calling it a dream come true on the red carpet. He sang "As Long as You Love Me" and "Beauty and a Beat" while trying to look professional. That viral moment when he glanced at Cara Delevingne, it humanized him in a way his management probably loved. The boy among goddesses trying to play it cool. But here's what the star power meant for the brand: confusion. Critics noticed immediately. One called it like a live music video where celebrities were the stars. Media reports noted that Rihanna's star power dominated. One writer quipped that the models made the rest of us cry as they competed for attention with her powerful vocals. The fashion was getting lost in the concert. VS had clearly invested heavily in booking these performers. The production value of their performances, the coordination required, the star power assembled, it all pointed to significant financial commitment. But the strategy seemed sound. Big stars meant bigger ratings. Younger viewers who might not care about fashion would tune in for Bieber. Music fans would come for Rihanna and stay for the spectacle. Except it didn't fully work. Despite having the biggest stars in VS history, ratings dropped. 9.4 to 9.5 million viewers, down roughly 10% from the previous year's 10.3 million. The most expensive musical lineup ever assembled for a fashion show, and fewer people watched. The paradox was perfect. The more VS spent on spectacle, the less special it became. The more stars they added, the less star-like their angels appeared. The fashion show was eating itself, consumed by its own excess. Karlie Kloss opened the circus segment wearing feathers. Not just any feathers, a full Native American headdress. The production called it "Representing Thanksgiving." November show, Thanksgiving reference. What could go wrong? Everything. Within hours of the taping, social media exploded. Cultural appropriation wasn't yet the mainstream concept it would become, but people knew offensive when they saw it. A white model in a sacred headdress, strutting to pop music while nearly naked. The images spread faster than VS could respond. November 11th, 4 days after taping, Victoria's Secret issued their apology. "We are sorry that the outfit could be seen as insensitive. We absolutely had no intention to offend anyone." Kloss tweeted her own apology, backing the removal of the segment from broadcast. When the show aired December 4th, the circus segment opened differently. Kloss's walk was gone, edited out like it never happened. But the internet remembered. Screenshots circulated. The damage was done. This wasn't VS's first cultural misstep. Previous shows had featured Spanish goddess themes, Eastern-inspired segments that borrowed from cultures like costumes. But 2012 was different. Social media made the backlash immediate and undeniable. Twitter didn't wait for think pieces. The anger was instant, viral, uncontainable. The headdress incident revealed something fashion hadn't wanted to see. The world had changed. What worked in the 90s, exotic fantasies, cultural tourism through lingerie, was suddenly unacceptable. VS had been producing the same show for over a decade, assuming the rules were fixed. The rules had changed while they weren't looking. Some defenders argued it was just fashion, just fantasy, not meant to be taken seriously. But that defense missed the point. When you broadcast to millions of people, when you're one of America's most visible brands, everything you do is serious. Every choice has weight. Every costume sends a message. The swift apology and edit showed VS understood the stakes, but understanding and changing are different things. The 2012 show still featured 5 other themed segments that played with cultural imagery in various ways. The damage wasn't just one headdress, it was an entire worldview that treated culture as decoration. December 5th, 2012. The morning after. 9.5 million people had watched the show. By VS standards, this was concerning. The ratings told a story nobody wanted to hear. Despite Rihanna, despite Bieber, despite Bruno Mars, despite the $2.5 million bra, viewership had dropped nearly 10% from 2011. The trajectory was clear. Industry analysts would later note that by 2015, viewership had fallen to 6.6 million. By 2019, the broadcast would be canceled entirely. But the real disruption wasn't happening on television. It was happening in everyone's pocket. Instagram had launched in 2010. By 2012, it had 100 million users. Suddenly, everyone could see models without watching a fashion show. Behind-the-scenes content was available instantly. The mystique that VS had spent decades building, the exclusive glimpse into a perfect world, was dissolving into a continuous stream of images. Models started building their own brands on social media. They didn't need VS to make them famous anymore. Cara Delevingne, who walked in 2012, would soon have more Instagram followers than VS's official account. The power was shifting from brands to individuals. Meanwhile, the conversation around bodies was changing. Body positivity was still nascent in 2012, but it was growing. The idea that beauty came in one size, one shape, with wings and diamonds, was starting to feel not just exclusive, but actively harmful. VS's fantasy was becoming fashion's liability. The male gaze, which VS had built an empire on, was becoming problematic. Not yet toxic. Me Too was still 5 years away, but increasingly questioned. Who was this show for? Who was this fantasy serving? The answers were becoming uncomfortable. VS tried to adapt. They added more performers in subsequent years, made the shows even more spectacular. But spectacle wasn't the solution. It was the problem. The bigger the shows got, the more out of touch they seemed. The more they spent on fantasy, the more real women wanted reality. The 2012 show stands now as a perfect time capsule. Peak production values meeting the beginning of their irrelevance. Maximum spectacle at the moment spectacle stopped mattering. The most elaborate fantasy ever staged, right before everyone stopped believing. L Brand's executives probably sensed something was shifting when those December 5th ratings came in, but they couldn't have known how dramatically. They couldn't have predicted that in 7 years, the angels would lose their wings forever, that the fantasy bra tradition would end, that the fashion show that defined American sexuality for a generation would simply stop. On December 4th, 2012, 9.5 million people watched angels descend from heaven. They thought they were seeing fashion's future. They were actually watching its past take its final bow. The wings were already falling. We just couldn't see it yet through all that perfectly edited spontaneity, all those millions of dollars of diamonds catching the light.